The first major crypto legislation focusing on stablecoin regulations in the US is driving a new chapter for key industry players, and that includes the world's second largest stablecoin issuer, Circle. And now Circle is mulling the idea of reversibility in transactions to push crypto deeper into the mainstream. Now, CNA's Elizabeth Neo asked Circle's president, Heath Tarbert, if pushing for reversible transactions would go against blockchain's foundational principle of immutability, or the state of being non-alterable.
The regulatory community has also said it's very important is deterministic sub-second finality. Now, that's a very fancy way of saying if you send a stable coin and send money over the internet, you need to make sure absolutely, almost instantaneously, that that transaction will go through, that it'll be validated and immutable for all time. So right now, many of the general purpose blockchains, you have to wait several minutes and you have a 90% chance of getting your block confirmed. For enterprise grade, that's just not good enough. We've also heard from the TradFi sector that right now there's no mechanism to deal with refunds, chargebacks, fraud. And so separate from the blockchain, which again is immutable, we're working to consider building an application layer on top of that, where if folks agree to various conditions that are built into smart contract technology or an escrow, they can actually facilitate chargebacks very easily. So hence, the original transaction is not unwound, but it's, quote, reversed in the sense that there's a counter transaction, a so-called chargeback. So it's very interesting. It's very important to distinguish between those two features. We absolutely want the immutability that blockchains bring, and we want that to have sub-second finality. At the same time, we want to have that flexibility that we have in the TradFi sector to address real-world needs. We combine them both with the infrastructure layer and then the application layer on top.
Yeah, and I wonder if the Genius Act spells more spillover for the region, for the Asia region as well, and the adoption that we see in the US. Could that also kind of influence and inspire more acceptance here? I think in Singapore we just launched, or rather there was a launch of the XSGD, and then Coinbase has the scan to pay stablecoin service. So you're seeing this pickup in other sort of currencies of stablecoin, and I wonder how all this just comes together, plus with the Genius Act, the kind of spillover effects we could see. It's
coming together rather well, and of course Singapore was an early mover in this space. We have a payments license in Singapore, and we've had it for several years now. It's a really important part of our footprint, but we think that the more that we have sound regulation in jurisdictions around the world, the more the take-up and growth of stablecoins you're going to see. So they feed on one another. Singapore right now is considering creating bespoke regulation for stablecoins in particular. And so we very much would welcome that development. The other thing that the Genius Act does in the United States, which is really an important step forward, I think, it's something the United States traditionally has not done, having been a regulator and a government official in the US, which is create a framework for the recognition of equivalent regimes around the world. So under the Genius Act, if you want to have a stablecoin issued in the United States, traded in the United States, you can comply with the Genius Act as written, or you can apply to have our Treasury Secretary recognize your home country's regime as the equivalent, and then have your stablecoin introduced into the United States in that way. That really opens the door for integration of stablecoins around the world and mutual recognition. So we welcome that development.